Hey ladies, good morning or good afternoon whenever you guys get to see this. We would like to discuss a few things today. We actually did a video last week and it ended up kind of not recording properly, and so we couldn't post it and it was kind of sad, but we got over it and we figured maybe that just wasn't meant to be. So we're going to touch on what we did a video about last week, which was boundaries, but we also want to talk about contrast. So that being like how we're all different personality types and have different characteristics, and how that actually can help each of us grow when we have like that opposite person in our life. And also something that I think that everyone sometimes struggles with, or maybe not everyone, um, but quite a few people, especially the people pleasers, will struggle with saying no to something and then think, and I had a conversation with someone the other day thinking that they have to come up with about 100 reasons why they can't do something, or explain yourself in multiple ways
Mhm.
to someone. So I think that could be for an interesting conversation, especially because I think that there's different opinions. So um, yeah, so if we want to just, I'll just open up the conversation to Tamara, Courtney, whoever feels pulled to maybe discuss something first.
Which are we going to be going over boundaries again, or?
Briefly, not as
Okay,
in depth as we did.
go ahead, Tamara.
Okay, so I really can relate to that people pleasing part that Devin said about like feeling like you have to say yes. If you say no, explaining yourself why you're saying no, having 500 reasons. I used to be that person, and I look back now and I realize how exhausting that was. And so I've sort of like found myself in a place now where if I don't feel an instant hell yes, I'm gonna say no if there's nothing that's going to serve me in saying yes. And I've realized that that's okay. And if the other person is upset that I said no, that's something that they need to deal with. And I'm okay with that now. And I never used to be okay with that. I would fill all of my time saying yes to everything, going to every place that people needed me to be. And it was really just draining on me. And so I can definitely relate to that. And it feels really good when you can navigate your way through and get to a place where you're not saying no to please other people, but you're saying yes to serve yourself, and that's okay. And there's going to be times where that hell yes is serving other people too. But whether it sounds selfish or not, I don't believe that it does. I think it's essential to make sure that we are serving ourselves, because as long as we're serving ourselves first and filling ourselves up, that's how we get to serve other people at our fullest. And I feel like if we're always just going around saying yes to everything, we don't actually have what we need to serve those people, because we're trying to serve from an empty cup. And for a really long time, I felt super guilty about doing for me first, because I felt like I had to do for everybody else first. And that's not saying it's not important to serve other people, because it is, but how do we serve if we're not full first? And so I feel like it's very important to really just think about whether that person who needs you or that thing that needs you um, is a yes or a no.
Court?
That's like, I feel exactly the same way. I didn't really have much to say about saying no, because I don't know if I've ever really struggled with that, like, or at least like noticed that I was struggling with it. I think, yeah, sometimes you get into positions where you're like, I really don't want to do this, but I feel obligated or something like that. But I agree totally, Tamara, that like if you're not doing something coming from a good place, or like if you're doing it with an empty cup, then it's really not serving you or the other person. So yeah, I agree with that completely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the same thing. Like, there's even been moments where, like, I've kind of debated the whole, well, like just for example, like say Leland wanted to go to something and it was with people that I was like, they're not really into the same things that I am. They're into like, say they're into more into like drinking and just like that kind of thing. And not saying like whatever if you're into that, but I'm not really into that. So for me to go there, I end up like I just feel like I end up sitting in the corner by myself on my phone for lack of connection. So I want to say yes for him. There's been times, and it hasn't been so much like recently, honestly. Well, like even before this whole social distancing thing, but it would be like for someone's like special birthday or something like that. And I just started asking myself, what am I going to get out of that? Because if I'm not like, well, and to some people that might, like you were talking about feeling like maybe that's a bit selfish. It might, but when I could be doing something that's productive, that's pushing my life goals, that's and like making me a better person so that I can have a full cup, so that I can go out and do the things that I'm passionate about, that's where I think I put boundaries in place
Mm-hmm.
for that reason, where I'm like, that's not really filling my cup. And if I felt inclined, like intuitively to go, if something was drawing me, then I'd honor that.
Hmm.
But if it's not honoring me and it's not serving me and I'm just going to go sit in the corner, which I've done numerous
Mm.
times in previous occasions in the past, I've been there, done that, and it's not my cup. So,
Mhm. And I think that's really important. Like I got away from that explaining myself, giving reasons why I couldn't do it. And sometimes people need an answer. Sometimes they're like, okay, but I like, why can't you? So being completely honest, like right now I'm in this place where I'm working on me and I'm growing as a person and I don't feel like this is certain. And they can take that however they want to, but I feel like it's important for them to see us honoring ourselves as well. Like you're saying, Deb, like if it's something that intuitively drives you, like absolutely follow that. But if there's that part where you just don't want to and that person needs an answer, it's okay to let them know that that specific thing isn't serving you where you're at, and just allowing ourselves to be okay with that and not worrying what they're going to think about the reason that we gave them, if they're really somebody that needs a reason.
mm-hmm.
I'm just thinking about something, guys. So I've been listening to some podcasts about like control, and it was just talking about how we as humans, we really want to control things, and like everything that comes our way, we want to be in control of it. But they say that we really actually want surprise. What do you guys think about that? So like say, you know, you're faced with the same situation over and over again of say, okay, so say Devin, that Leland really wants you to come hang out with him and his friends or something, or you know, say a family member, or and you know, you just keep thinking like, oh, they're just going to be drinking, I'm just going to be in the corner. Like say you don't have maybe that intuitive drive, but what if you were to like take it as a challenge, or just being open to the experience in whatever way it comes, just to be open to that contrast, to kind of like move into the topic of contrast. What do you guys think about that?
uh, I don't know if it's just like my age and having gone through so many moments of like, maybe it'll be different this time, maybe it'll be different this time. And I don't know if it's my own expectation or if it's literally just the way that people are and they don't see that there's like anything wrong with it. And maybe it's not wrong at all with what they're doing. But like for my experience, I, so for myself, I had like an alcoholic stepdad. My family, uh, alcoholics. They drink like all the time whenever we were together. Um, didn't show up at my wedding like reception for like 2 or 3 hours after because they had to go drink. So I've seen a lot of stuff that way. And, you know, as a young kid, I didn't really think about it or like have any expectations or know the things that I know now. And do I think that I like, you know, because we talk about what we create and what we speak into like our own lives.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't feel like I'm the reason that they were drinking. You know what I'm saying? Like just because you know, and I'd still go and actually like my cousins and I would have a great time. But it seemed like there was always things happening because of the drinking that was involved in the situation. So I kind of think I got accustomed to seeing that. So for me, because of what I've seen, and maybe that will change over time, there are some hard lines for me. There are hard lines of what I want in my life and what I don't want in my life, especially when it comes to alcohol. So, like, it took me a really long time to just even feel comfortable around other people who were drinking, let alone, because, like, I always seen like a certain way of being. So, I think that contrast can be good, but I think that there is like a certain point where you may go into survival if you were in experiences over your life that just made you feel uncomfortable. You're going to go into like a survival. So maybe at some point, but honestly, like right now, and I've told you this before when we've had other conversations, I said like I could feel resistance in me to what was being said. And okay, so for example, that right there is contrast, right? Like that's you know, like when we've talked before and I'm like, yeah, well, I feel it, right? And then I came to like, I mean, it took like a week and then I came to a place I was like, oh, you'll never guess what happened. This is what happened. And it was like a totally different opposite thing. So I'm the type of person that likes absolute certainty, but then when I have friends such as you who push the boundary for me and I'm open enough to think about it, then I start thinking about it. And it might take me a week to get there, but at least the door's open. So that's what I would say about like contrast. And I'll really, maybe that was like a really long roundabout way and hopefully it made sense. But that's how I have felt. So I feel resistance initially because well, and like in at the UFD, you either like absolute certainty or you like uncertainty. So those are contrasting, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is, yeah. So
I'm going to touch a little on like contrast of emotions because I've really been feeling that lately. So Devin just talking about like resistance. For the last 3 days, I know that I've just been like fighting against and resisting like negative feelings that are coming in because I don't like how they make me feel. So rather than just like opening up, feeling the things, and then being able to release them, it was clearly resistance. I was like, I don't want to feel these things, and it put me in like a really weird place. So I'm just feeling like the weight of all of the things that are going on in the world. It's everywhere. We all know what's happening, but we see it constantly in emails, in our news feed, in conversations with people. And I was really just trying to like ignore those feelings and just feel happy and feel good. And I couldn't because I needed to just feel those things and acknowledge them and accept them. And once I was like, man, like I'm totally resisting this, I just had a moment of like, really just like feeling them, feeling super heavy and not loving how it felt. But then I could let them go and actually replace them with those good feelings. So I feel like in like the aspect of contrast, we need to feel those negative, stressful, kind of hard emotions that really suck in order to create those happy feelings. I think we had a conversation before where I called it like the yin and the yang of things, right? Like we need to have that resistance in order to grow and in order to move forward and in order to get out of a negative space and into a positive space, because what else is going to push us, right? If we're not feeling those negative things that we're being resistant against, we're not going to be able to move forward into something more beautiful and something better. So I feel like we need to have like that pull and that push in our emotions to be able to grow.
Yeah, that's like just like what Esther Hicks talks about all the time, right? Like being able to uh, be exposed to those contrasting things so that you know what you don't want, then you can put into the universe what you do want, right? It just is
Mm.
like a thing in your head that you're constantly um, making sense of, right? And I think that is why contrast is so important. Like literally nothing could exist without like you can't be we can't be the way that we are without the way that other people are, right? And
Mhm.
like all of these relations that we have with other people, you know, sometimes we criticize them for things that we've done ourselves. And if there's something that you don't like about somebody else, then there's the opposite that is something that you want to be, right? So like
Mhm.
all of this is necessary.
Yeah.
Totally. And I feel like that almost works into the boundary part of it because, again, Court, you're talking about like that contrast, the resistance, the push and the pull, that I know what I don't want, and you need to feel that in order to know that you don't want it. And then those good, like happy place, happy feeling connections where you're like, yes, like this is what I want. That kind of just falls into that place of like setting boundaries, knowing that being in this space makes you feel X, Y, and Z. Not wanting to go to that place, you draw that line, right? That boundary of, okay, these are the things that I don't want in my life, and these are the things that I do. So then we set those boundaries in place so that we're not always putting ourselves over here in this bad space. And we
Mm.
create more of what's over here in that positive, fulfilling space that we want to be in.
Yeah. And I think that if you do that, then it's not so much of you actually having to go and be like, hey, I don't want to be a part of this. It's that
Mhm.
you literally don't attract that to your life. So you never actually have to say no anymore. So I
I
guess
love
maybe if
that.
there's ever a reason where you do have to say no, it's because maybe there's a lesson there or like something that you have to learn, whether it's actually about you going to that space and learning there, or
Mhm.
just learning what your line looks like,
Mhm.
what you want to do and where you want to go with your life. But one thing I was thinking when you guys were talking about like, contrast is uh like in scientific terms it's called like entropy. So it's when the natural course of the universe is to fall into disorder, and then once it falls into disorder, then it comes back around and it creates order. So there's this continuous cycle of like, chaos order all the way around. And so you're right, Courtney, nothing could really exist without like being both. There has to be both sides. And like as you said, Tamara, like with yin and yang, there's a reason that there's those symbols, or that people talk about it so much. And I think that, even though, so like I'd say, Courtney, like going way back to your whole question, like I do agree, like that it, like with the contrast aspect of it, I think that it's really important to like learn and grow from the contrast. But how long it takes different people, like that kind of stuff is really up to that person. But I think it's also really important to be conscious and be aware of how, like how you do function,
Mhm.
like being aware of like the ego
Mhm.
and where like that's coming from, because like I know on my higher level that what you're seeing has valid, like it's valid, right? But your ego that always wants to keep you safe and protect you
Mhm.
will resist it and be like, no. So like I can feel and see both sides of it, where um I can feel the resistance still, but I'm aware. So I'm
Mhm.
like consciously competent enough
Mhm.
to be aware of. And I think like that's a huge thing. Like Leland and I were just talking the other night, and I had gotten a text from a friend, and she was saying something, and he said, well, he's like, it's really important actually that she's at a place where she's consciously incompetent. She still hasn't figured out how to get there, but she's
Mhm.
conscious and she's aware. And that's the first step.
Mhm.
Instead of just being unconsciously incompetent, now she's consciously incompetent.
Mhm.
But so I think, yeah, like it's just a matter of like gestation. Like how long does something take? And if you love uncertainty, you're going to jump right in. You're going to be like, hey, this is great. But for those of us who are like, no, I like absolute certainty right now. And that can change, I think, as we learn and grow, right?
Mhm.
It's really like a lot more difficult. And I think that's where the resistance starts. I start seeing the resistance build in myself. But like I said, over like a week period of time, because I'm a thinker, I'm always thinking.
Mhm.
And I repeat conversation in my head, and I'm like, no, she had a point. So I guess that's where I come from in that stance.
Beautiful. Beautiful contrast.
Yeah, right. And that's another thing too, is like we can look at contrast in so many areas. We can look at contrast in our relationship with our spouse and our relationship with our kids and our relationship with ourselves, right? And like our relationship with people and our connection. If we didn't have people that were all very different but still on the same path that we're going, I don't feel like there would be as much growth, because we need to have one another's opinions and we need to have one another's different levels of energy and vibration to help us move in that forward direction. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, there's a ton of growth in ourselves, but we need to have those other people to surround ourselves with so that we have just that, yeah, that different contrast of everybody's personality and characteristics to just move us forward.
Yeah. Well, isn't that actually, Courtney? This is reminding me of a conversation that we had of like probably well over a month ago, maybe. Well, it was because it was back before all this stuff, other stuff started. But where I was telling you that I said like in my previous marriage or like relationship, we did not fight over anything. We
Mhm.
agreed on absolutely everything. And then what I noticed started happening as I started changing and like I started reading and like educating myself and becoming more knowledgeable, um, then I started questioning
Mhm.
what was being said and like not, and then started thinking for myself. And then that's where the contrast came from. And ultimately, it pulled me out of the relationship because it was
Mhm.
either save myself or save my marriage and be kind of an empty shell of a person. So I think we were talking about that like 2 months ago, and I said like we didn't fight. We agreed on everything, and it
Mhm.
created like a very small world where you only find the people that agree with everything that you're saying.
Right. They don't stretch you and help you grow. And that's
No.
what we need.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, it's interesting that you were just talking about that because it brought my mind back to that like 2 months ago when we talked about it.
Yeah. And well, and it makes me think of this morning too when Devin and I were talking about just how some people view the world, when somebody is different from you, you feel threatened or you feel
Mhm.
like they're not the same as you, but in reality, we're all the same and we all want the same thing, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
like being able to just take a step back, even when you're you're faced with contrast, you're faced with somebody that doesn't agree with you, that doesn't have the same even values, morals as you. Those are like deep rooted things. Then if you can take a step back from that and just see like we're all the same, we all want the same thing, but we're all doing it in our own way and we're all at our own point. And
Yes.
yeah, just being able to see it, take a step back and not just be so opinionated and so engulfed in your own self,
Mhm. And I
right?
think with you saying that, it's so important to realize maybe those people need our contrast in their life, right?
Well,
Like,
yeah, I was thinking like a lot of like what I said before, how a lot of times when we're criticizing somebody for something they've done, we've done either the same thing or something similar, right?
mhm.
And like just think if when we were in that position of doing something that say we don't agree with anymore because we've changed or grown, if someone was to face us with love or kindness or understanding, like just think how it could have changed the situation. It could have, you know, changed our energy in that situation, right? So if you could look at it that way and be like, you know, we've all been there, and I'm just going to give you love because I want.
Well, and sometimes I think, like, when you're actually just talking about that, I just had like this random thought pop into my head, because I'm just thinking about like certain people that, you know, we've had in our life where maybe they've broken our trust or like numerous times, right? And wouldn't it be nice if we could get to a place where we didn't even, if we had so little identity with the self that it didn't bother us that they had done that to us? But in the meantime, like we also said this, and like thinking, like looking back on it, I was like, oh gosh, but it is kind of funny in a way because I'm twisted, I guess. But it's like where, well, it is good. Okay, I'll explain myself. It's like where you, like, remember when we were talking after we had worked out, and I was like, we were talking boundaries and people and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I have enough for you. I have enough for you. And I don't have anything for you, but I have enough for you. Because your ego's like, no, that person's not safe. Like, you don't need to go there. But
That's the tiger in the bushes person right there.
Yeah, it's the tiger in the bushes. But I would like to get to a place where I don't resonate with that so much anymore, and I can just forgive people. And I also, and something that's very clear to me, but I'm still trying to attach like emotion to it, is that people are a product of how they grew up.
Absolutely.
And if I can find forgiveness for, like, you know, other people like that are close in my life that have been through so much, and I like create understanding, I create the understanding around the situation. But then there's other people where I'm like, oh, well, they did, you know, like, and I forget that they're a product of how they grew up. I would love to be able to do that. And so I'm hoping to like create that for my future. It's not quite where I'm at right now because I have clearly to learn a few more things before I get there. But
isn't that awesome?
Yeah.
Guys.
That's so good. And I think it's so important just to remember, like Deb, with you talking about like forgiveness and just loving people, that we were all created in love. We were created out of love. That is our core. And so if we can just remember, and again, like people have different beliefs, whether it's Buddha or the universe or Jesus or whatever it is. But for me, I think back to like the people that Jesus was drawn to and hung out with were not the people who were perfect and who were on this righteous path. They were the people that were broken and that needed love. And I think those are the people, I mean, I know those are the people that need us because we have that. And when we can just start from that place of love, I feel like it's going to help us learn to just move into forgiveness a lot easier and be able to just love all of those and not pick and choose what the ego tells us and who the ego tells us we should be loving and pouring into.
Yeah, I love that. I think actually like that's probably the perfect place to end right there. Just about love each other.
Yeah.
See the greatness in each other.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we are all the same. It doesn't matter race, color, culture, skin, none of it.
Yeah.
So we are all created the same way. Thank you. Have a great day, ladies. And
love y'all.
Bye.
Bye.